Okay, this is the third video of the series, and this one's going to have to do with priming your cases and charging your cases with powder. There's many different ways to do both of these steps. Basically, these videos I'm doing are for the beginner, so I'm going to use the method that I use for the single stage press. And then after I'm all done this series, I'll show you how all this process works real quickly in the progressive press. That way you can see the difference between the two different styles of presses. So most of your presses come with an adapter that you put on there, and then you can use the handle here to press the primer into the case. I find it easier to use a separate tool, the hand primer, and Lee makes this one. And when you buy your primers, they come in a package of 100. You just take these primers, dump them in the tray, and then this little tray has all these little nubs, so that way when you shake this back and forth, it orientates all the primers upright. Okay? And then you put your case, your cover on there, and then all your primers will feed down into this channel, and they're all ready to go inside here. There are different things you can buy. Like Dylan makes this one here, and this is the same thing. It's just a tray, and it's got this texture. It's hard to see on the video, but when you put your primers in there and you shake this back and forth, it'll upright all the primers. You put the cover on it, flip it over, and then they're all upside down, and that's the way you do it for the Dylan. You got this tube that you go down on each one of these primers and then feed it into the progressive press. So just kind of trying to highlight all the different options there are. So I have all my primers in here, and then you get yourself some reloading blocks. Holds all your shells, your cases where they need to be, so that way they're not spilling over and stuff. So all these are ready to go. All you're going to do is take your piece of brass, put it in the shell holder, and then squeeze this trigger that's on the side, and that little ram will push that primer right up into the case. I'll get a picture of this. If I zoom in, it's going to be fuzzy. So you just do all these real quick. And I'm going to do 8 of them here. You can just kind of get the idea of, I usually do 50 at a time, batches of 50, because that's how much the reloading block holds. So it's that easy. All 8 of those cases are primed. So my next step is going to be to get the powder measurer all set up, calibrated with the scale. That way I can charge all of these cases with powder. So I'll get some powder in here, and then I'll show you how that process is done. Alright, so we got our cases all primed up and we're ready to put some powder in the cases. So there are a lot of different ways that you can do this process. Like I said, the number 55 comes with the Lyman kit, and this is just a powder dispenser. So you have your adjustments on the side here, a coarse adjustment and a fine adjustment, and then you just keep running powder through it and checking every single one until you get it to exactly where you want it to be. So right now I want 5.5 grains of tight group. So you would just dispense your powder like that, and you can see I'm at 5.6, so I would just run that in a little bit and then just keep doing this until I hit 5.5. When you make an adjustment, just run a couple charges through it so the powder settles in there, and then put it on your scale. So that's 5.5 grains right there exactly. If you're a little bit low, you use a trickler, and I just basically fill this up with powder and then turn this little knob, and it's going to trickle a little bit of powder in there at a time until you get the scale exactly where you would want it to be. 5.5 grains. So once you dump that out, you can use a funnel, just put that powder right into a case, and then, or once you get it set up and you're confident that it's throwing 5.5 grains every single time, you can just dump them right into the case like that. So I usually do 10, and then I'll recheck it just to make sure I'm still at 5.5 grains or whatever weight you're going to be at. That way if it's off, you can just dump those 10 back out instead of doing them all, because you want to make sure that you have exactly the right amount in there. So This is the Lyman digital scale. Like I said, that comes with the kit. I'll put all this info on the when I make the video about what the costs are and everything. So that's one way you can do it. And then with this number 55 measurer, you can actually take this off and mount it right to your turret press through the expanding die. And you can have this sitting right up on your turret press. And then as you expand that case, dump a charge right into it. So there's always that way that you can do it. I don't do it that way. I like to do it this way so I know exactly how much powder I have going into every single case. Couple pointers. Anytime I have powder in a dispenser, I always leave the jug right next to it because a long time ago I would forget actually which powder is in there, and a lot of them, they look similar, so you either have to dump all this out. That's really your only option, because if you forget what kind it is, you don't want to create a dangerous situation by guessing. So I always leave that right near there, so if I get busy and I forget, I can know which powder it is and I can dump it right back into the jug. After I get done putting powder into a case, I'm going to go over a couple different other ways to charge a case, but I just want to mention this before I forget it. I always keep a flashlight on the bench. After I get done priming all my cases, I'll check inside each case, because the Winchester small or pistol primers, they're red. Okay, so when you prime a case, you can look through the flash hole on the inside and you can see a red dot. That way you know every single one of those cases got a primer in it. And then after I'm done charging all my cases, I'll do the same thing. I'll take my flashlight and verify that each case got charged. Okay. I mentioned earlier that tight group, I'm using half the amount of powder that I used to use, so it's very easy to double charge a case on accident if you're not paying attention. It'll fill, this case right now isn't even half full, so I could get 2 charges in there, put a bullet in there, and then go to shoot that bullet. Now you got twice the amount of powder. It's obviously a recipe for disaster, so another good reason to verify the levels in each single round, in each case. The opposite is true also, that you could forget, you maybe skip one of the cases and not have any powder into it. You seat your bullet and then you go out to the range and you're shooting those rounds. That primer has enough in it to get that bullet started down the barrel. And it's going to sound like it went off. It's called a squib round. So you're firing your weapon really fast and you don't pick up on that squib. As soon as you shoot that next round, that bullet's going to hit the bullet that's jammed in the barrel, and it's going to cause a backfire situation. Just Google it on YouTube. There's plenty of squib videos out there, and the devastation that it can create. So you don't want to be that guy that somebody was firing your weapon, the rounds that you made, and you took off part of his face or fingers or something because of your carelessness when you were reloading. So check and double check everything. It's not a race. You do not have to go fast. Just make sure that you're taking your time and you're doing everything right. That way you feel confident if somebody was to shoot your ammo without having any incident. So, and you don't want to be liable for anything that happens to their firearms and stuff either. So basically, reloading, I do it for myself. I don't sell my ammo. I don't give it to anybody. Sure, I'll let people take my guns and try them out and stuff with my ammo in it, but outside of that, I'm really the only one shooting my ammo. It's not really a good idea to get into the habit of reloading for friends and stuff like that, because of the liability that's associated with it. So having said that, back to the scales. No iPhones, iPads, anything electrical around your scales, because it'll throw off your readings. Just wanted to mention that. Even some guys I read had problems with lighting in their room, magnetic fields and stuff throwing off your scales. So that's the basically the beginner way, the way you would dispense powder. When you get a die kit, it will come with a little scooper in it. I've never even used this way, but it's got this little scoop in there that you can scoop powder out, and it'll tell you how many cc's is in there. I'm not really sure how to use that information if you got to weigh it and then you know how much each one weighs, but that's basically the redneck way, as cheap as they come. I would not recommend using the scooper, but I've seen videos where people use them and they work fine. But, so anyway, I'm going to move on to the next dispenser here, the Gen 4 Lyman, the digital automatic dispenser. So let me get that set up and I'll show you how that's used. Alright, so this is the Lyman. I think it's the Gen 4. I'll put the information, like I said, once I make the video, so it's accurate and you know how much it costs and stuff. So Like any scale, you need to really make, and I forgot to mention this in the last scale that I did, but you got to make sure it's calibrated. Each scale comes with a weight that they want you to calibrate it with. The other scale comes with a 100 gram weight, and this one comes with a 50 gram weight. So you just enter your calibration mode. That one says Cal 50, so that means they want you to put the 50 grain weight on there, and then you hit Cal again. Give it a second. Make sure you're not moving around and breathing on and all that stuff. So right now it's calibrated to 50 grams. And then what you're going to do is you're going to put your scale on there and zero it out. So I'll hit 0. And it's on grains. A lot of scales do different grams. There's one that's used for jewelers. I don't remember what it's called, but different increments you can use on there. So I got the tight group in the hopper here just a little bit, so I emptied 3 of these cases out just so I can show you how this one works. Basically on this one you're going to type in what the weight is you want, and then this one has a feature, auto repeat. So every time that I put that empty tray back down on the scale, it's going to dispense 5.5 grains more, or whatever I put in. Like I said, this is what I use for ladder loads, because you really need to know how much powder is in every single case. It's got to be exact when you're testing out new powders, so you can get good results in the end. So I'll put 5.5 grains in here, auto repeat, and then I'll just hit enter. Five and a half grains. I'll use my funnel. I'll dump that right in the case. And then as soon as I set this tray down, it'll calibrate again and then dump 5.5 more grains. That little slow movement's trickling it. That's the same way as this works, but you move this by hand when you're using the other type of scale. So I'll dump this into here. And I'll just fill this last one. And that one said auto 3. It'll actually count how many times you dispensed powder until you reset it, so you can keep track of how many rounds you've loaded. So that's the Lyman Gen 4, the digital automatic dispenser there. So the other way that you can do this is, like I mentioned before on the Dylan, it's got the powder dispenser already made onto it. It's kind of like this number 55 type deal. You just keep dumping charges until you're comfortable with it's throwing the same amount every single time, and then you start cranking ammo out and just keep the hopper. When you're putting powder in this stuff, you got to keep it, I keep it at a pretty high level. That way the weight down here is the same. If you're using like a little bit of powder in there, as that goes down, it's going to get lighter and lighter, and it might not pack into the hole as much, and you might get different results when you're dumping the powder. Not as consistent, so always keep it full. Keep your eye on that. So that's it for this part, adding the powder. So my next step is going to be to seat the bullet in these, and that's going to be my next video.